Okay, everybody, welcome to Miracle Monday. And today we are going to talk about a topic that is not addressed a lot, but it is coming to the forefront now for discussion because we feel now that there are more parts of the mind that are waking up. And this is something that a lot of people are experiencing. It's called the eye of the needle. And as Muji says, every liberated being will be going through this. We can't avoid it in right time. And coming to love only God is the very gravitational pull that ensures its inevitable arrival. So we're going to start off. Lloyd is going to do a little bit of reading and going to share a little bit as he's guided. And then I'm going to share for about 25 minutes. And then we're going to take about a 5 to 10 minute break. And then we're going to come back to address any questions or comments that anybody might have. So Lloyd is up.
Okay, and I'm going to start reading from the 50 Miracle Principles by Ken Wapnick. And somebody asks him a question about, can you become enlightened in one lifetime, so to speak? And he says, yes. For most of us, we still have lots of work to do. But can we do it in one lifetime? Well, in principle, he says, yes. Since the whole world and our experience here in the body is all a dream, then all that we need to do is awaken from the dream and it's gone. Now, that would be a level 1 perspective. However, on level 2 in the world we believe that we are in, the degree of fear that roots us here, which is the fear that God would destroy us if we ever relinquished our hiding place within the body. And that's a really powerful statement right there, because as the Course says, the body is the ego's home. And he says right here that if we relinquished our hiding place, which is the body, then the fear of God would destroy us. And that's very extreme, he says. We require a gentle awakening process, as the Course frequently states, and he gives a text and where it is in the Course. But within the illusory world of time, this process will take a long, long time. As the Course in Miracles also says at one point, the Course says, as I mentioned before, that if we can forgive one person totally, we will have forgiven all of them. Now, this is the same kind of statement. In other words, that's a level 1 statement. Our experience, however, is that we need to forgive many people and the same person over and over. Our guilt, in effect, gets chipped away rather than made to disappear in one huge chunk. Now, that is why it is important, if one works with the Course as his or her path, to have a healthy respect for the ego. And I'm just going to get Stefanie to read something that's very important at this stage about the ego body concept.
Okay, so the ego uses the body to conspire against your mind. And because the ego realizes that its, quote, enemy can end them both merely by recognizing they are not part of you, they join in the attack together. This is perhaps the strangest perception of all, if you consider what it really involves. The ego, which is not real, attempts to persuade the mind, which is real, that the mind is the ego's learning device, and further, that the body is more real than the mind is. No one in his right mind would possibly believe this, and no one in his right mind does believe it.
Now, you might want to take note somewhere where that is. It's in The Only Answer.
Chapter 6.
Chapter 6.
Paragraph 5.
Paragraph 5, because when one starts to go through this, that is probably one of the most important paragraphs that they're going to read, is where the mind and body join in the attack against you. Right. So yeah. It says, a danger many people fall into is thinking that the ego can be done away with with 1, 2, 3. And like we've seen that amongst course students where people will say, oh, just ignore the ego, or, change your thoughts about the ego and it'll disappear. Well, I'm going to tell you that is so far from the truth that you can't even imagine, because that's why Ken says you have to have a healthy respect for the ego. The ego made this whole cosmos, and every cosmos beyond this cosmos. So it can't be relinquished with just ignore the ego. That just doesn't work. So when you do that, is all that really happens then is that people deny the ego rather than look at it and then change their minds about it. Thus, many choose to overlook the more difficult passages in the material that deal with special relationships and say instead that A Course in Miracles is about love, period. The Course is not about love, it's about guilt. By recognizing our guilt, we are then able to let it go. Then the love of God is restored to our awareness. But we cannot skip over steps. This is one major advantage of being a psychologist, having this self-respect for the ego and understanding how deeply rooted we all are in its dynamics. And another thing I'd just like to make you aware of here is that when you read this kind of material, you must understand it's not talking to you, the person that's reading the book. There is no you reading a book. We are just a neutral figure in the dream. What this course is addressing is only your mind. But the mind and the body are totally connected. That's the thing. There's no separation between the mind and body, but the course is always addressing the mind that's projecting the body, which is the split mind. A Course in Miracles says, as we have seen, that when we come closer to the ego's foundation, and here's where it gets really good, when we begin listening to the Holy Spirit more than the ego retaliates and becomes vicious. Now it says, see above page 64. That's the next one. Page 64.
Right here. Okay, so this is the passage that he's referring to.
This is the passage he's referring to.
The ego is deceived by everything you do, especially when you respond to the Holy Spirit, because at such times its confusion increases. The ego is, therefore, particularly likely to attack you when you react lovingly, because it has evaluated you as unloving, and you are going against its judgment. The ego will attack your motives as soon as they become clearly out of accord with its perception of you. This is when it will shift abruptly from suspiciousness to viciousness, since its uncertainty is increased. Yet it is surely pointless to attack in return. What can this mean except that you are agreeing with the ego's evaluation of what you are?
Okay. And when Ken says here, the ego retaliates and becomes vicious, he says the course means this literally. The ego's goal is murder. And he says the course also means this literally as well. To ignore these references is to miss the heart of the course. And it is also to miss the specific role of Jesus and the Holy Spirit in helping us through these painful periods of unsettling, as the course in one place refers to this process. And that's the next one in the manual.
Okay.
Wait a minute, no, that'd be manual. That's it there.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the next stage is a period. Okay, this is good actually, because I was going to go over this myself. So we'll just read it now and get it done. The next stage, this is in the development of trust, by the way, and it's stage number 5. So the next stage is indeed a period of unsettling. Now must the teacher of God understand that he did not really know what was valuable and what was valueless. All that he really learned so far was that he did not want the valueless and that he did want the valuable. Yet his own sorting out was meaningless in teaching him the difference. The idea of sacrifice, so central to his own thought system, had made it impossible for him to judge. He thought he learned willingness, but now he sees that he does not know what the willingness is for. And now he must attain a state that may remain impossible to reach for a long, long time. He must learn to lay all judgment aside and ask only what he really wants in every circumstance. Were not each step in this direction so heavily reinforced, it would be hard indeed.
And that's saying that during the fifth stage of development is when the ego really gets vicious. And this is when we come to the realization why we've learned to trust. Because at this point, a lot of people want to turn back because it can be overwhelming. And this is when we say we've come this far by trusting, but our trust has to really get ramped up at this point. We really have to hang on to Jesus's hand through this procedure because it's a complete undoing of the ego. And the ego does not go lightly. And when it says, it can last a long, long time, I can only tell you in my own personal experience, it's been 17 years. So it's not something that just comes and goes in a few months. It can, because every one of us is on an individual curriculum, of course.
Right.
So it can be totally different from, everybody, every part of the mind. But for me, it's been an ongoing procedure for 17 years. And it's like you do become sort of used to it. And you get through it. You're going to get through it because your trust really becomes 100%. And at this point, you also really have to understand that you're not the body. That's very important. Because you have to realize that it doesn't matter really what happens to the body at this point. And Jesus gets you through. It's just something that total trust in the procedure is necessary. So it says, in fact, he says right here, and it is that evil also to miss the specific role of Jesus and the Holy Spirit in helping us through these painful periods of unsettling. As the Course in one place refers to this process, which we just read, it says, we need their help in holding our hand, leading us through when the ego's viciousness becomes so overwhelming. Then we can begin to experience the illusory nature of our guilt and fear, the seeming terror the Course refers to, and to know the love of God that truly upholds us. And that's what the eye of the needle is all about. It's putting you through the ringer. It's putting the ego through the ringer and bringing it out the other side. It's like threading a piece of thread through the eye of a needle. All that comes out the other side is your love for God.
Beautiful.
So the next question is the body, the ego, the identification with the body is yourself. Somebody says, I'm confused. Can you discuss that? He says, essentially, A Course in Miracles talks a great deal, especially in the earlier chapters, about the ego-body equation. We are always equating ourselves with the body. One thing which is helpful to keep in mind is that the ego is more than a body. It's very important. After the body dies, the ego is still around. Remember, the ego is a thought system that is predicated on guilt. The body is merely the embodiment of the ego. The thought of the ego taking form, or the thought of separation taking form. The body is merely a learning instrument. It can either reinforce the teachings of the ego, or it can reinforce the teachings of the Holy Spirit, which would ultimately teach us that we are not the body. We come into this world so we can learn certain lessons. We come into this world with a lot of excess baggage. Our suitcases are filled with all kinds of dirty clothes, our guilt and our fears, etc. Whatever it is that we have not emptied out while we were here, whatever guilt that we have not released or forgiven when our bodies appear to die, we still take it with us. The name of the game basically is to get rid of as much of the dirty linen as possible. In other words, let go of as much guilt as we can. Whatever we do not let go remains with us. Once again, A Course in Miracles does not specifically treat the whole issue of past lives or reincarnations, but it certainly does imply it. And I think would therefore teach that whatever it is we do not forgive or let go of, we take with us, and then we come back again. I'll just stop there for a second. In a sense, he's talking on level 2 here, not level 1. In level 1, the Course describes the fact that all our lives happened at the same time. And it says we are reviewing mentally that which has gone by, which means we keep looking at lifetimes of different movies until we forgive everything, until we've actually forgiven all our false projections. But they all happened at once. It's not like reincarnation. We figured we go from one lifetime to the next lifetime to the next lifetime. That's not the way it works. It works that when you leave this particular incarnation, you get to view another one, but all of them are over. That's why it says you were reviewing mentally that which has gone by. The world was over long ago. So it's really important to understand that part of the Course in Miracles, that concept, is that every one of our lifetimes all happened. Time is not linear. It's like a hologram. It all happened at once. So there is a very wonderful and moving passage which talks about the lifting of the final veil, which is the last obstacle to peace, which says, "Here you stand before this final veil, and you make the choice whether to pass through or wander off, only to come this way again." What he's saying there is that when the ego gets vicious and you're going through this particular stage of the development of trust, some people do turn back at this point. They can't just stay with it. So they quit. They quit doing the course or go on to something else that's simpler. And that's okay. If you're not ready, you're not ready. Because eventually everyone has to face this fifth stage of development, but none of us know, what lifetime that's going to be in. So it's okay, and it's not to feel guilty that you do turn back at this point. But it says, you wander off only to come this way again. This is saying that you have the choice of really working this through now, or wandering off and coming back in whatever the form the lesson will take, to then learn that same lesson. Whatever it is that has not been healed, we take with us. The ego survives after the body dies. The ego is more than the body, and we just choose whenever we wish to. This is our choice, to come back into the world of the body so we can work through whatever parts of the hologram we have not worked through. This is really a mind-boggling idea. Just because we believe we are in this particular dimension of time and space, say in New York State in 1985, does not mean that in another aspect of our mind, we are not in ancient Greece or Palestine or someplace 300 years from now, which is going back to the fact where I said that all our lifetimes happened all at once, and that's what he's saying here. When we return in another lifetime, it could be we go back in 2,000 years, or we go ahead 300 years. All that it means is that we're just tuning in to a certain part of the television set in our mind. And whatever it is we are tuning into, we are making real. What makes that seem so mind-boggling is the belief that time is linear. It is not linear. And certainly some of the quantum physicists are teaching us that same thing. The linearity of time is just part of the same ego ploy to convince us that the guilt of the past is real and is projected into the future in terms of fear. And that is what our reality is. And that pretty much covers that subject. And the form of the viciousness of the ego, a lot of people think that it has to do with, people showing up in your dream and attacking you kind of thing. And that can happen, but mostly it's a personal thing that happens to you. It's like you will feel like a little attack, and it seems like it's within your body, and it's like a painful kind of thing, and it lasts for a couple of minutes and disappears. And that's just one aspect of it. But the fact is, nothing is ever happening in the body. The body is a completely neutral vehicle. It all happens in the mind, but what happens is that the ego projects it onto the bodies because it wants the part of your mind that thinks it's a body. It wants to keep you grounded in that belief. It wants you to think, no, I'm going to show you that you are a body kind of thing. And that's just a little bit of it. Stefanie will go into some things that happened to her, but it can come in all kinds of different forms. And you'll sometimes, for me, at first, I thought I was really going insane. I've had some experiences, something like, what was the name of that movie?
The Exorcist.
Huh?
The Exorcist.
The Exorcist. Yeah, The Exorcist. I always forget it, but I don't know how many have seen that movie. There's some pretty bizarre things that happen there. And I've had some of those bizarre things happen. And thank God I had some Jesus with me, because I probably wouldn't be sitting here, doing this Zoom session with you, because it was pretty terrifying. But again, the development trust is a gradual thing. And when you get to that fifth stage, most of us are ready for it. Oh, Stacey just left, or Stefanie just left for a minute. But you'll get through it. At first, it's pretty fearful. But again, the course has given you enough mind training that you will have enough strength. And I'm not saying this to put you in any kind of fear, believe me. It's just that it's helpful to know that you're not going insane and that there's other people who have gone through it. And it's not really the people that are going through it. That's the whole point. It's actually the mind that's going through it. It's the actual annihilation of the ego. And it's the ego's fear of God, and it's projecting onto the body that fear. And it can come in many different forms, and it can be mental, it can be physical. And it's simply a part of the journey home, and not to worry about it, because everybody gets through, because we all made it home already. And of course, makes that very clear that not one note in heaven has ever been missed. And I'm still here after 17 years when it started with me. And I'm here to sort of explain it to you and help you through it. And Stefanie and I are always here, for people to talk to. And we have talked to a lot of people all over the world that didn't even understand what was happening to them. So it's also very joyful, and it's happy. Some amazing things start to happen to you. And it's really, again, happening in the mind, which makes it all worthwhile. And you will totally realize that you've never, ever been alone, that the Holy Spirit has always been with you, has never left your side. It's your sidekick, always. And Jesus is there, you know, to help you. Anyway, I'll turn it over to Stefanie at this point, and give you lots of food for thought. And if you've got this book, I suggest that you read it from page 100. Very, very, very informative. And read the passages in the course that he talks about here. Because the one thing about Ken Wapnick, he never taught something that wasn't in the Course in Miracles. He always gave the references to where you could, you know, get it in the course. He just sometimes helped to explain it a little bit, because sometimes our mind just can't wrap around, you know, what the course is saying. But he was a great teacher, and I'm so glad that, you know, he was one of my teachers. And just before I pass it over, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. There's two videos that I would suggest, if you haven't watched them, or even if you have watched them, watch them again, watch them 3 or 4 times. And that's called The Two Dreams by Kenneth Wapnick. It's on YouTube. And I'm going to tell you, it's the whole story's in those 2 videos. And it's so helpful. But it needs to be watched, you know, 3 or 4 times. I think we watched it about 7 times. And every time we watch it, it gets a little clearer. But that's my suggestion for you today anyway. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Stef.
Okay, fantastic. Now, guys, do you want to take maybe like a 2 or 3 minute break, or will we carry right along here as if we were normal? You want to take a break, Kath? No, okay, we'll just carry on. All right. So hi, everybody, and thank you so much. That was such a beautiful, really like an introduction, I think, to what I'm going to talk about. You know, it's amazing how it all just works together when we leave it to the Holy Spirit. Yes, Fran, we will definitely do that for you. We'll post all that for you at the end. So basically, I just want to share a little bit about my experience with the Eye of the Needle. And I've shared it before, but it just seems that lately we've been getting a lot of requests, a lot of people reaching out on Messenger and email, wanting to know a little bit more about it, or have it, you know, going through it themselves, perhaps, or just beginning to go through it themselves. And like Lloyd was mentioning, everyone is going to experience this differently because we are on an individualized curriculum. We're coming from different experiences, but there are certain things that we can share that will help others who are about to go through it, or are just, you know, beginning to go through it. It will help them know that they too can get through it. When you can join with a mighty companion who understands what you are going through, it is deeply, deeply helpful. And sometimes you don't even have to say very much. And there's a couple of people here on the Zoom call today that understands that. And because, you know, there are some people here that, for example, will reach out for 5 minutes and just talk and express, and they will feel better just knowing that there is someone who understands based on the fact that they have gone through it.
You might mention that's why we got together.
Well, that's not why we got together, but that was certainly very helpful. When I was going through it, Lloyd had already gone through it. And just a couple of things he said, well, it was more than a couple of things. It was an ongoing conversation that was deeply helpful for my mind. So in 2019, I started to go through what I like to call an accelerated purification process in my mind. I had been going through, now I'm going to just use a reference of the 6 stages of the development of trust. So I was going through the period of settling down for a very long time. I was in that stage, and I really felt that I had done a lot of forgiveness work, and I had indeed done a lot around special relationships, my mother, my daughter. So I really felt that I was there. But little did I know, and it even says, and I'm just going to read a couple of sentences from this particular stage. It says, the teacher of God needs this period of respite. He has not yet come as far as he thinks. Yet when he is ready to go on, he goes with mighty companions beside him. Now he rests a while and gathers them before going on. He will not go on from here alone. And that was certainly my experience. So in 2019, my mom had just passed away. And I just, well, first of all, I had met a friend of mine, and we were just chatting about all kinds of different things, including channeling. We were chatting online. But really, the Holy Spirit got me together with this person because we were about to go through the eye of the needle together. And we really our experiences were very paralleled. So we really shared, a lot of commonalities, which really helped us. So the way that it happened for me in the very beginning was that I started to receive, I call it a laundry list of false hidden beliefs every morning when I would wake up. And they would just come to me. It was just like somebody was whispering it to me. And my job was to quite simply just look at those beliefs, just contemplate them during that day. And then the next morning I'd wake up and I'd be given another laundry list of beliefs. And I'm just going to read a couple of those here. This is something that I compiled because as I was receiving these beliefs, I was writing them down. So the list goes something like this. The belief in the loss of innocence, the pain of survival, the need to be right. So I was being asked to look at the need to be right, the need to be wrong, the need to be a fixer, the need to be a cleaner, the need to be a wholeness blocker, the need for anything other than divine love. And then I'll just go ahead with some more of these hidden beliefs. The need to be released, the need to be loved, the need to be attractive, the need to be seen, heard, known, the need to know anything, the need to be supported, the need to control. And so these are some of the hidden false beliefs that were coming up. And of course, you don't really realize you have them because they're hidden. So this purification process that the mind is going through is bringing up all these hidden false beliefs. And our only real job, when they start to come up, the only real job that we have and our only real responsibility is to look at them, just notice them and look at them. So that's what I did. So I did that for a period of about 4 months. And then I was guided to go to a conference in Boston, which was a gathering of 550 Course in Miracle students. And that's, of course, where I met Lloyd, and I've shared that experience. And Lloyd and I got together about 4 months after the course conference. And of course, Lloyd, I knew, I knew about 2 years before I met Lloyd that I was going to be meeting someone because I was getting glimpses and hints from spirit that somebody was coming into my life that was going to be a light for me. I was also shown about 5 years before I started going through the eye of the needle. I was being shown through symbols that I was going to go through this experience. And these symbols included a dream in which I was on a vine, which was attached from one end of a cliff to another cliff. So I was on the vine, like upside down, trying to shimmy my way across this vine between two cliffs. And what I felt was terror. And so I was being shown a glimpse of the terror that my mind was going to eventually go through. So just when I was in Newfoundland, and Lloyd was actually going to be coming to pick me up in about 6 weeks' time. So this is when the eye of the needle portion of the purification process really amped up. It really, really started to get going. I was experiencing fear before this, but not terror. So the terror started overnight. So what happened was I was out for lunch with a friend. And when I came home that day, I just walked into the living room and all of a sudden I experienced this really sharp and intense pressure in my head. And I had no idea what it was, but and it brought fear as well. So I was experiencing this fear, and I didn't know what it was. It was a sense of anxiety. So I asked the Holy Spirit, I just got quiet in my mind and I asked for help. I said, can you tell me what this is? And very quickly I heard, the mind of God is here and you're sliding into home base, which is when the ego screams the loudest. And so I was being given a glimpse into what was happening, although it didn't really help. When the terror started to really accelerate and become overwhelming and unbearable, I'm sure that in the back of my mind it helped, but believe me, when this level of terror erupts in the mind, there's really nothing that helps. And I think that that's important to bring that out. I don't sugarcoat this experience, and I've learned that most of the mighty companions that I've joined with are appreciative of the fact that I don't sugarcoat it, simply because, you don't want to sugarcoat it because someone is going through this experience. They want to know that I too, or someone has gone through this experience. They want to know that someone has gone through it and has gotten through it. So you can't really sugarcoat it. I don't really feel that that's helpful. So that was the first message I got about it. So really this began, I think it was about a 23 or 24 day period of just waking up in the morning and slipping into 100% anxiety. And, that's the only way I can explain it. I was afraid of everything. So in other words, the fear was not only specific, but the fear was also abstract. So everything I would think about brought me fear. And it was also abstract. In other words, even when I wasn't thinking, I felt fear. And this went on from day in and day out. I would wake up in the morning and I would say to myself, oh God, please, hopefully now it's over. I'd say to myself, hopefully this is it. And I'm going to get up out of bed and I'm not going to be in fear. And then by the time I would reach the washroom, I would be almost on the floor, collapsed. I was in so much fear. So I sometimes explain it as I was on the most excruciating roller coaster ride. My mind was on this most excruciating roller coaster ride. I remember one day I parked my car down by the ocean and I was just laid back. I went into the reclined position and I thought maybe this will help, hearing the waves and just relaxing, the fresh air. And I'm sure in a certain way it helped, but it was just a really intense day. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the hospital because I need help. I really felt like this was it. I just needed help. But my car just went in another direction. And I went to the grocery store and I picked up some herbal tea. And I went home and I made my herbal tea. And just the ritual of doing simple little tasks would help get me through the day. So at this point, I just want to share with you some tips, a couple of tips that help me on a very practical level. What helped me get through the day. And what I just said is one of those tips. Just keep doing your normal tasks. I felt that was very helpful. So instead of, for example, just totally withdrawing from your life and going to bed and staying there for 3 days, like that didn't work for me. I needed to somehow continue with my day. I felt that the action, the activity of doing that and moving through my day helped me somehow. It showed me at the end of the day that I could get through my day. And that was helping me build the strength of God within me. And so that was really developing the trust. Just getting through my day was really cultivating the trust. Because we go back to the 5th stage of the development of trust. Well, going through these 5 stages or 6 stages, of the development of trust are really how we cultivate trust. So when we hit the 5th stage, everything we're going through is really cultivating the trust, although we don't feel like that, because it's really important as well to understand that there are going to be times, certainly during my experience, there were many times that the Holy Spirit did not feel available to me. And it's important to understand that because, I would sometimes be reading on Facebook that just ask the Holy Spirit to help you. And you have to know that the Holy Spirit is there for you, and you have to reach out to the Holy Spirit. Or you would hear something along the lines of, what you're going through when you're going through a dark time, it's because you're denying your divinity. Well, this is not the case. The eye of the needle is happening because you are not denying your divinity. You have reached 100% commitment. You have come to love only God, which is the very gravitational pull that ensures the eye of the needle's eventual arrival in your mind. So, yes, going through your daily tasks is very helpful for me. The other thing that helped me, and actually the Holy Spirit suggested that I do, is focus on your breathing. The Holy Spirit said to me, just take a nice deep breath when you can, when you're not in the middle of an anxiety attack, just take a nice deep breath, because you will feel saturated in God's love when you can just take a nice deep breath. And there were days that just doing that is what got me through the day. Because when you take a deep breath and you feel that deep breath penetrate, you're not in fear in that moment. You're released in that moment. It can be just a couple of moments, but it's enough to get you through the day. And so that was incredibly helpful for me. And of course, reaching out, or I should say, being open to being guided to a mighty companion who has gone through this, of course, was the ultimate in help. Because just being able to reach out and know, like Lloyd one day said to me, it's brutal. The eye of the needle is brutal, but that was incredibly and deeply helpful for me, because it showed me that he had gone through it and he understood. And my God, I felt so relieved when that happened. So this is a period. I got another. I know this is a lot of food, by the way, in a very short period of time, but I'm sure that you'll retain some of it. So I just wanted to read a little bit about the actual tools, the tips and the tools that will help you get through. And not only will these tips help you get through the eye of the needle, because it may be that you won't go through the eye of the needle in this lifetime, or it may also be that you have already gone through the eye of the needle in another lifetime. But I feel, from everything I have learned, that the eye of the needle is something like direct revelation, in that the mind has already decided when it's going to go through this process. So fear not. If you're going to go through it, or if perhaps you are going through it, you have already built up enough strength in the mind to go through it. You are prepared. You will not go through it until you're prepared. And you will, as it says in the end of stage 4, you will not go alone. You will go with mighty companions beside you. And so the list of tips that I have compiled is the breathing deeply to feel saturated in God's love. The second tip is there is a single pointed focus that is being asked of you here. An unfaltering and unwavering present moment awareness. Focus on nothing but staying in the moment. And this is the thing, and I know I've talked to Kathy and Louise, who are here today, who say the same thing. It's like you are so overwhelmed because remember, as Lloyd mentioned, the mind is going through, you can picture an eye, the actual eye of a needle. So the mind is going through this purification process in which all your errors or perceived errors, past, present, and to come, are all being pointed out. The needle, you're being needled. All your past and present errors are coming up. There are things that are coming up. You have no idea what they are or where they come from. And so, it's like you're strongly encouraged to stay in the moment here, because you really have no choice. I know I've heard Kathy say it's just so overwhelming, to even think about something that you're going to do tomorrow, because you're barely getting through the day. So this whole process is really driving you into the moment, because that's where we're going, right? That's where we're heading. We're heading into perfect trust. We're heading into present peace, which is outside of time and space altogether. And so the third thing to understand is that during this time, it will feel like everything is coming at you from all angles. However, remember that it's for the purpose of rapid ascension. The eye of the needle is really happening for the purpose of rapid ascension. It's a time to reach high into your faith, to understand that you are loved, you are assisted, and you are fortified each night with new power. These are the couple of, I thought, very wonderful tips that I received. It said, with each setting sun, sigh a deep relief and enter into a period of intense and immense stillness. These are your anchor points and your opening points for more light to enter. And the other way I like to explain this is that during this eye of the needle phase of your awakening, you will feel peace, and there will be times of respite, and you will feel beautiful peace, and you'll just feel so grateful. And these are your anchor points. These are the times that the spirit is flowing in and funneling into your awareness. And so it's very beautiful. You will really cultivate a 100% desire for peace during this process. The other tip is, with each new day, face the sun and tell God you are here to wake up, and that more than anything, I want the peace of God. The eye of the needle is the last hurrah of the ego, which cannot separate you from God, who is your source and almighty counterpart of creation. This too shall pass. It is a brilliant promise from God himself. And the last thing I want to say is that mighty is the one who waits under the lapel of God's love for the storm to pass. You are severely tempted to abandon him at the outside ring of fear, but he would lead you safely through and far beyond. And that's from A Course in Miracles in the text, chapter 18. So it looks like we've reached the 5 minute to 1 mark.
I just want to say here that we also experience so much joy and happiness that's almost indescribable at times. So, you know, we're discussing a phase that we go through here. And even during that phase, you know, it lets up and then comes back in. And in the meantime, we still experience a lot of joy. And now we experience incredible joy and happiness. I mean, our days are just filled with it. And when the Course says, when you want only love, love is all you will see. It's so true. Because you go through your day and you see it everywhere. And like, it's just incredible. It brings tears to your eyes sometimes. Things that you normally wouldn't have noticed at all. It just seems like it's forefront, because that's all you want. You want love. You want to see it everywhere. And that's what happens. You do end up seeing it everywhere. And of course, you know, the whole purpose of the Course is to bring you to the real world. And the real world is simply a world where you no longer are projecting any more unconscious guilt onto it. Your mind has been emptied of unconscious guilt, so it no longer projects it onto the world. And that's the real world. And, you know, a lot of people say it's not about waking up from the dream. But it actually is, in a sense. The real world is the fact that you have woken up from the dream, because you're not projecting any more unconscious guilt out of the mind. It's like Jesus said, I'm in this world, but not of it. That's the phase of the real world. You're in the world, but you're not of it anymore. Nothing will bother you. You can watch the news, all kinds of stuff. It just will have no effect on you whatsoever. And that's when you've attained the real world. And it's a beautiful place to be. So,
Okay, guys, so we're
yeah.
going to take a 5-minute break, 5 to 7 minutes, let's say, and then we'll just come back and
You might
address.
need a shot of whiskey after this.
And if anybody has any questions or anything, comments, whatever, we can go right ahead and ask them. We'll start at like, let's just say 5 after 1, okay? I'll see you shortly. Well, 5 minutes because we're all on different time zones, although there's no time.
Okay.
All right, we're going to put her on pause here now. Okay, you go ahead, Jackie. You can unmute yourself now. Here.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me good? Because the last week you had a problem hearing me with
Yeah.
the video.
We're having an issue, Jackie.
Off?
We are having an issue with hearing you. So the only other thing I can suggest, there you go. Yeah.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can hear you better now.
Okay, great. Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for the information that I've been listening to this week. I mean, it's really helped me get through the week so much smoother. But of course, I have a lot of questions that I feel I will get answered. Now, because I'm preparing for a doctor's appointment, I missed some of what you were saying. I caught some of it, so I hope the question I'm asking isn't something that you already mentioned. I never heard that the ego is still around. That was something that I heard. We come in with baggage. That was very interesting to me, that we come in with baggage, but at the same time, everything is happening at the same time. There's no other lifetimes. I apologize, that's my phone. There's no other lifetime. What? Not lifetimes. I'm sorry, the phone threw me off. Reincarnation. That's a whole different concept. I'm trying to put this together, and I know it's going to take a while, but all lifetimes happens at once. So I'm wondering about a lot of things, but okay, let me ask another question. The script is already written. Is that correct? Where everything that I'm going through or went through, it's a script. So it's like not that I don't have a choice, but I don't have a choice. So just calm down, go with the flow, because it's already written. Me having 6 children, that was already written. Me going through domestic violence, that was already written. So do I just accept the fact that all this is already written and calm down, Jackie, and just go through what you're going through in peace, which I know I need the Holy Spirit definitely to help me do that. But is that the gist of it somewhat?
Okay, Jackie, listen, this is an amazing question that Lloyd is going to address. Okay, just I'm going to put you on mute, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you, by the way. I love you.
Thank you.
Yes, as far as the script is written, yes, it is. Everything's written. It's all really predetermined. Now, it's not predetermined by anyone else. It's predetermined by you. That one mind, the one split mind. And you do have choice. It's the mind that has choice. And of course, the body responds to mind because they're totally connected. The split mind and body are totally connected, not your real mind. Your real mind has nothing to do with bodies. But your split mind and body, they're one complete unit, really. And within the script itself, yes, you have choice. And the choice is whether you're listening to the ego, of course, or listening to the Holy Spirit as you're watching the script unravel itself. And, as the Course says, our only function, and it says our only function is forgiveness. And of course, that forgiveness is, a completely different kind of forgiveness that the Course teaches. Because it teaches there's two kinds of forgiveness: forgiveness to destroy, and then there's true forgiveness of what the Course teaches. And the true forgiveness is forgiving your brother for what he has not done. Now, when we first read that, we have no idea what that means, because we think, oh yeah, I have proof my brother did this to me, right? But the whole point that the Course is really trying to teach you is all your projection. Everybody in your dream is your projection. You put them there. So they can't possibly be guilty of anything. They're acting out for you just the way you want them to. That's when you wrote the script with the ego. These were all characters you put in your dream, and they're just simply acting out your script for you. It's like when you come to a fork in the road, let's say, and you want to know whether to go left or whether to go right. Both choices have already been made. In other words, what it means is that if you choose to go right, then there's a movie waiting to be played out for you making that right-hand turn. It's not like you're making it up when you make that right-hand turn. It's already there waiting for you to choose it. And vice versa. If you choose the left, turn left, there's a video in the videotape library that's going to play out that you chose to turn left. And you could say, okay, instead of turning left or right, you could say the left-hand turn, I chose the ego. The right-hand turn, I chose the Holy Spirit. And there'll be two different scenarios that are going to play themselves out, but they're already taped. They're already waiting for you to choose that tape. It's just like, when we want to wake up from this dream, it's us that has to choose it. The videotapes are already made there for your choosing to awaken. So it's not like you're doing it now. It's all done. It's all done. It's just a matter of choice and which movie you're going to watch and who you're going to watch it with. And that's the simplification of it. Is really quite simple. We make it complicated because we don't understand this process. But it's all about choice. We're sitting back in a theater watching a movie, but who are we going to watch the movie with? And it's like Keith Kavanaugh always says, like, you're sitting back in the theater with Jesus saying, what has this got to do with me? And, it's true. It has, the movie itself has nothing to do with the real you. The real you is back in the theater. And the real you has never entered a body, by the way. A lot of people think, I've heard this said by even some Course teachers, that spirit animates the body. That's so untrue. The Course makes that very clear, that spirit has never entered a body. The body is simply a projection of the ego mind or the split mind. And yes, it says the world was over long ago, and that's the truth. That really all happened at once. The answer was given. There was a tiny mad idea. The idea was answered immediately, and it was all over. But in time, it seems like it's going to play itself out over millions of years. And that's what we get caught up in. That's why the Course is teaching us true forgiveness, simply because as soon as we make anything in this world real, we are saying that the world is real. We're actually reliving that tiny moment of that tiny mad idea. We're believing in something that's not really happening. And that's how we get caught. And we get caught lifetime after lifetime because we're judgmental creatures. So every time we judge, and in theory, we're judging nothing because nothing's really happening, but we're thinking that it's real and we make it real, and that keeps us trapped into watching more movies. So when you leave this, we'll call this an incarnation. You go into a state of bliss for a little while until the unconscious guilt catches up with your mind. And then you get frightened again. You go into a fear mode and you search out another body to return in. Even though it's already happened, But we don't know that. And we keep choosing to return until we finally get to the stage where we're starting to understand what's going on here. And then
Okay.
we start doing what the Course says.
All right,
Forgiving.
guys. Hazel has her hand up. So Hazel, I'm going to get you to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And Stefanie and Lloyd, this has been very helpful. I really appreciate all of this information. It's a lot to digest.
Yes.
Stefanie, if you could just again state where you took that introductory reading from. I didn't catch it. I'd like to go through it and reread it before the recording is posted. And then Lloyd, if you could talk more about, you mentioned, excuse me, you mentioned, you know, if the body really starts to deteriorate, if you could talk more about that. And not, you know, and just kind of where that all goes. Because you know, I feel I've been going through the eye of the needle now for probably, you know, 17 years myself or more. And I'm, you know, the last few years, I've just been losing a lot of hair. And, you know, I know that has a lot to do with guilt and just self-attack and projecting out attack. And if you could just talk about that more, I'd appreciate it. Both of those areas, the reading and then the deterioration of the body, and to, you know, to reclaim it, or can it be reclaimed, all that sort of stuff.
I just want to ask you about, you know, before whatever, I just wonder what you meant about the reading.
Well, it was, I don't know, something about page 64. I don't know where it was actually sourced.
Oh, okay. That was, you know, what I read at the start?
No, Stefanie, I think Stefanie was reading it. You know what? I don't know. I'll just go through and.
Well, it started, she
we're
read.
Put some of the references.
She read from page 64, which is referenced in what I was reading at the start.
Right.
Okay.
And it's from the 50 Miracle Principles by Ken Wapnick.
Okay.
And
all right.
On page 100 is where it starts in there. And it references different things in the Course. And that's what we were going back and forth a little bit. And that's where it said read page 64. That's maybe where you came in. It's possible.
Right.
Okay.
But if you have the 50 Miracle Principles, I mean, the whole book is amazing. But if you want to read sort of what we were talking about today, it starts on page 100.
I'll pick up.
It gives you the specific references to the Course.
Thank you.
And as far as
Hazel, I was just going to say, so basically you would like a little more clarification, or maybe whatever on the body, and, you know, dealing with certain specific physical symptoms, right?
Yes.
Right.
Well, I mean, the body in general is going to deteriorate. Doesn't matter what you do. I mean, you can't take the body to heaven with you. It just doesn't fit. There's no bodies in heaven. I mean, all of our bodies are eventually going to deteriorate. And, you know, there was quite a discussion on Facebook on another thread somewhere this week that I got into a little bit about Ken Wapnick. Everybody's, you know, there was a few people saying that he could hardly be enlightened if he died of cancer. Well, that's simply absurd. If anybody was enlightened, it was Ken Wapnick. And when I say Ken Wapnick was enlightened, I don't really mean Ken himself personally was enlightened, because bodies don't get enlightened. Only the mind that gets enlightened. And, you know, that part of the mind that we call Ken Wapnick was definitely enlightened. And for those that have read The Disappearance of the Universe, or any of Gary's books, by the way, Art and Prasad, you know, talk about Ken, and that this was his last lifetime. He went home, and that he was the greatest teacher of A Course in Miracles. And all I can say about that is that I have followed Gary's work for years. I was into the Course for a few years before I did, but after I got into The Disappearance of the Universe, everything really became very clear to me, and I started to get some amazing spiritual experiences. And from my own personal mind's journey, I can tell you that I've experienced 99% of the material in the disappearance of the universe. So I know that art and Persa are the real deal. They're simply manifestations of the Holy Spirit. That's all art and Persa are. But they're trying to come through in a way that we can understand a little bit. And, you know, people say they aren't real. Well, this guy here sitting on the couch talking to you isn't real. It's the same thing. We really have to come to that understanding. And, you know, that's how I gained so much trust, was the fact that I experienced most of the things in the disappearance of the universe. All the things that Art and Persa were talking about. And I occasionally do hear from them myself. I've never seen them. Like they said they'd never show themselves to anybody but Gary, although they may end up showing themselves to Cindy. I'm not sure. That could be in the making. But I do occasionally, I've heard from them personally myself, because they were a huge part of my awakening. And when I say my awakening, again, I'm talking about, you know, the mind. So as far as the body deteriorating, I found the Course in Miracles does give you a little bit more longevity. And the reason that is so maybe is because, don't forget, the Holy Spirit can collapse time. And what happens is that some of the things that you were meant to go through are taken out of your script because you've been doing the forgiveness process. So in a sense, sometimes it can appear that the body doesn't age quite as quickly. But I mean, eventually, you know, the body is going to break down. It has to go somehow. That's why it's absurd to think that, you know, Ken Wapnick, because he got cancer, that was his final forgiveness lesson. And Ken himself knew that, and he wasn't even concerned about it. He knew that he was not a body, and what he was saying going on with the body deteriorating was not true. He'd already accepted that in his mind. And when we lay our body down for the final time, that's when we actually, you know, we wake up in God, because we've never left there. And I've had direct revelation, so I know that experience. It's like when you're there with God, it's like you've never left there, and you never have left there. Yes, we had a dream that we left there, but nothing in a dream is true. That's what you really have to understand. We're dreaming. And dreams, it's like your nighttime dreams. When you wake up in the morning, you think, wow, I'm ever glad that wasn't true. But sometimes you have a really good dream and you get sort of caught up on that for the day, but it wasn't real either. There's nothing good or bad in the dream. And that's the one thing we do have to give up. It's so important, is to realize there is nothing good or bad in a dream. Really important. It's a dream, and it says none of its content is true. But as far as don't take on guilt, that's the ego. Yeah. If you think your hair is falling out, something to do with guilt, forget it. Just put that out of your mind.
It's a very good.
It's just part of the ego thing. You're like, I've been, we talk about being, getting attacked by the ego a little bit. I mean, I'm going through something right now where I have this radial nerve in my right arm. It's been acting up for 3 weeks. And it's just simply the ego putting pressure on that nerve. It's projecting through the body because it wants you to keep thinking you're not spirit, you're a body. And which we read, where the mind, the ego, the split mind and the body join in the attack. That's why it's so important to understand that. And it could be anything, your hair falling out, your eyesight's going, your hearing's going, whatever. Don't forget, the body doesn't hear, it doesn't see. It's all done by the mind. And one thing that blew my mind away a few weeks ago was when I really found out that all miraculous healings have nothing to do with the Holy Spirit. all miraculous healings are done by the ego. Because what happens is the ego withdraws its projection. In other words, let's say a body has cancer, and all of a sudden it disappears. There's no trace of it whatsoever, and it's happened to many, many different people. And what that simply is that the ego has withdrawn the projection of that cancer. Because if you go back to lesson 14 in the course, which explains, there's a blank area there. It says, God did not make, fill in the blank, cancer, so it cannot be real. Well, you could put, God did not make the body, which it says on page 105 of the Blue Book. And so it cannot be real. You can add anything into that blank, because God knows not form. It says that on page 631. And that's a statement that can't be twisted by anybody. People try and twist all kinds of words in the course, but you can't twist that statement, God knows not form.
And Hazel, the only thing because we're almost out of time here now, but the only other thing I would suggest or say is that health is inner peace. Inner peace, yes. And so in other words, I don't even think about anything anymore except for inner peace. And I use every malady that has ever erupted in my body, let's say, as an opportunity to forgive and just join with the Holy Spirit. And, we don't have to put any meaning on it. And I know that's a very popular thing to do. Like, except guilt. Rid of the guilt. My hair is because of the guilt and all that. And that's, I'm not saying that that's untrue. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying it's really just about joining with the Holy Spirit and asking the Holy Spirit to reinterpret it for you. And the only real reinterpretation is going to be, I love you. That's it. Right? And leave the rest to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is in charge of time and space, and he can collapse timelines and remove something from your script that is no longer necessary because you've completed your forgiveness lesson. So that's why forgiveness is my only function. And Jesus also says, you are not innocent in time, but only in eternity. And then he says, but there is no time. So you're innocent, period. Is that enough, Hazel, or do you want
That's great. That's fantastic. That's so helpful.
Thank you.
You have to quit worrying about what's happening to the body, because a healthy body or a sick body, they're both illusions.
That's like health. It's like positive thoughts and negative thoughts. Yes. They're all both illusions. Yeah. That's my lesson.
So when your mind is really being healed, you can look at the body, no matter what's happening to it. It's not you.
Okay, we have someone else here, and it's Sandy. Okay, Sandy, this is our last question before we turn off the recording, and then we can carry on, to the after party. But we have one more question, Sandy.
I can wait until after the recording's off. I was just going to share my experience of the eye of the needle. So whatever you would like.
My love, this is it. Go for it. Yes, and take your time. There's no rush. Yeah, we're not in any hurry here.
All right. So my experience with the eye of the needles started about 2 years ago. And just like Stefanie, this is why it's good to hear, mighty companions share their experience, because it triggers things. You realize that's probably when it started. I thought things were pretty much winding down for me. I'd done an incredible amount of forgiveness. I was basically counting down to enlightenment, I guess. Yeah. But then, some experience in my life that was already set in motion, my script, started really amping up. And I had what appeared to be attacks from the outside, and also the inside. I began to have extreme periods of anxiety and terror. And I started to reach out. I don't remember when I started to reach out, but I started to reach out to you guys. And I did to Kate a couple of times, Kate Greaves. But the way I can describe it, my finances were being attacked. And you know, even my health started really kicking up. But mainly it was a feeling of terror. So that's what the experience felt like. And it was, you know, I'd have periods throughout the day that, you know, where I'd have some peace, but the terror would come right back. And so I got through it through, you know, forgiveness and reaching out to, you know, mighty companions. And what I began to realize towards the end is, and that it has, I haven't had any periods of terror like that probably for maybe a month, 2 months. But it became apparent, and I heard it here and through talking to people that had come on the Zoom call, was that it's the development of trust. And as I began, you know, our finances, we didn't know for 6 months, we had no income. We didn't know how the rent would be paid or the car payment or food, but you know, we got food, we got everything paid that had to be paid. And so it was really the development of trust that got through that eye of the needle. I'm sure that there will be other lessons that will come, but sharing with mighty companions really helped. It didn't mean that I felt wonderful even after talking about it or even after talking to them. I didn't necessarily feel good, but I just knew that I had to do that I was guided to do that. So anyway, it is possible to go through it, even though sometimes you think that it's just, you can't take it. You know, those times really, even though looking back, I guess there were a lot of them, I don't remember them so much now. You know, I know that I was there, but I don't feel any pain. I just feel peace now. So I'm still in a body, so they'll still, and I'm not enlightened. I still have some pain now and then, but I can forgive it. I have tools, and I know that I can trust the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, it's not a blind trust. The Holy Spirit, like, you know, Gary says in the Disappearance and other books, the Holy Spirit has earned my trust, right? Because that's what it's all about. So I just wanted to share.
Beautiful. That's great, Sandy.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're so right. It's just to talk to somebody else. It doesn't necessarily, you know, take all the pain and stuff away, or the anxiety or whatever, but it does do something.
Right.
Because sometimes you feel so alone.
Yep.
And it's just the fact that you're talking to somebody that understands. And it's a sense of ease that comes about. It helps.
It does.
Yeah.
And it helps you separate, you know, when you're in the presence of someone who has gone through it and you're in a non-judgmental space, it helps you separate the wheat from the chaff.
Mm-hmm.
And we still, like Stefanie and I still have our days.
Yes.
And like, she'll have a day or I'll have a day. And it's so easy now for us because we're there for each other. We totally understand what's happening. That's what's the beautiful thing about it, is if you have somebody near you that you can even talk to, that knows what you're talking about,
right,
and doesn't think you're crazy. That's where the, you know, that helpful
that helpful component comes in.
Yeah, that component.
And you know, so the other thing too is that and there's so much more, by the way, that we could say about this. This is just scratching the surface, but I just want to say two other quick things, which might be 5 minutes. But I just want to say, number one, that there's going to be a lot of people in your life that won't understand what you're going through. And that's okay.
Most of them.
Yeah, most people won't understand. I know what happened to me. And I mean, I've had people, when I was going through a really, really severe case of it, you know, a couple of years ago, a friend of mine showed up and thought there was something wrong with me. And I just said, no, there's nothing wrong, because she couldn't understand. So she just, and I knew that. And I knew I had to get through it on my own. And so therefore that's something else. A lot of people won't. It's like you kind of need someone that has already gone through it. And the other thing I want to say as well, this is an important part, Sandy, that you reminded me of. You're in the fourth stage of the development of trust, and everything is sort of tickety-boo, and you think that you have separated the valuable from the valueless, but you only think that you have done that. And the reason is that we have such a strong, incredibly strong investment in the belief in sacrifice, which is the belief in loss, that we're not capable of separating the valuable from the valueless. And this is why the fifth stage comes upon us. The eye of the needle is like a rapid separating tool, separating the valuable from the valueless. It's like going through this stage which can last anywhere from, and by the way, it's intermittent. So it can come and go. Some people have gone through it, like St. John of the Cross's partner that he went through it with, who is, I think she was in France. She was a nun. She went through it for 10 years. So yeah, it's
That's
like
a piece of cake, 10 years.
Well, the thing is, and again, it's intermittent, right? The mind is going to have lots of relief, and it's like stepping stones. We will definitely have lots of relief in between, and we don't know. Like, I gave up putting any expectations or coming to any conclusions about any of it. And what I do now is I just become incredibly grateful for when I'm at peace, when my mind is at peace, which is much of the time. So I just wanted to mention that about the valuable from the valueless.
And you start to get used by spirit.
Yeah,
I can tell you that. We've had, in the last couple of weeks, we've had some amazing guidance experiences. And it really literally blew us away. So, there's some benefits along the road too when it starts to happen to you, because you're really starting to trust, number one.
Right.
And when you get prompted to do something, you don't ignore it.
Right. You value it.
You value it, and you go for it. And I'm going to tell you the stuff that comes out on the other end is, that there's something beyond this world. Let's put it that way.
The Holy Spirit really does earn your trust. And I think when you're going through the eye of the needle, you're really asked to trust big time. Like, you're just really asked to trust, even when the Holy Spirit does not feel available to you. A friend of mine said to me one day, she said, going through the eye of the needle, she said, there's nothing worse than someone coming up to you and saying, just change your thought. She said, that's like you're being pummeled in the sewer line of the Shawshank Redemption, sewer line. And somebody comes up to you and says, oh, just change your thought.
Oh, you shouldn't have flushed the toilet.
Right, I'm going to stop the recording, but everyone can stay, feel free. Maybe you want to ask a question, but you don't want to be on YouTube, with 1,000 views on YouTube. So I'm just going to say thank you to everybody here who participated and hung in there and listened. So thank you.
Yeah, it was terrific.
And, as fantastic. Lloyd always says, and now it's become my motto, you are loved beyond your greatest imagination.
That's a true story.